Naomi Chin sat motionless in the sterile twilight of her laboratory. The relentless hum of cooling fans and the faint buzz of fluorescent lights overhead weaving themselves into a backdrop of uneasy solitude. Her fingers hovered just above the keyboard, trembling slightly, as she stared at the encrypted file cascading across her monitor. Each line of code represented a piece of the horrific puzzle she had been forced to confront for months, evidence of the mind manipulation, experiments surreptitiously conducted beneath the luxury skyscraper she worked in. She had joined the corporation initially with hope, eager to advance scientific knowledge, but the creeping realization of what her research was being weaponized for now gnawed at her conscience. The room was cold, sterile, even by laboratory standards, yet Naomi felt a deeper chill settle in her chest. A photograph taped inside a locked drawer caught her gaze. A small girl with bright eyes and an innocent smile, a fragment of her own family life before the corporate world had consumed her. The image was a daily reminder of what was truly at stake. She swallowed hard, the weight of responsibility pressing down like an anchor, threatening to drag her under. Could she continue to stay silent, to do nothing? The answer was clear, yet terrifying. That night, after the last of her colleagues had filtered out and the building had almost emptied, Naomi slipped through the shadowed corridors, clutching a small encrypted drive close to her chest. The air was thick with the scent of damp concrete and the faint metallic tang of the ventilation system. She navigated the labyrinthine underground parking garage, heart pounding in sharp rhythm with the echoing steps of distant security patrols. In a dimly lit corner, almost swallowed by the darkness, Lila Morgan waited, lean and alert, her piercing gaze flickering with cautious anticipation. "You shouldn't be here," Naomi whispered, her voice barely audible above the distant hum of the building. Layla's lips curled into a tight smile. "Neither should you. But we don't have the luxury of waiting." Hands trembling, Naomi handed over the drive. "This contains everything I could extract without raising alarms, data on the experiments, subject files, even internal communications. It's not much, but it's a start." "It's everything," Lila said, her voice thick with gratitude and steely resolve. The two women exchanged a fleeting look, an unspoken pact binding them together against the mounting darkness. Naomi's mind reeled with the consequences of her choice. If discovered, she would be branded a traitor, her career obliterated, her safety compromised. Yet the alternative, complicity in the erasure of countless lives, was unthinkable. Days passed like a fevered blur. Naomi returned to her duties, maintaining the delicate facade of compliance while secretly siphoning information to Lila. Each clandestine transfer chipped away at her nerves, the double life exacting a brutal toll. She found herself retreating from colleagues, avoiding casual conversations that might unravel her carefully constructed disguise. One afternoon, a sudden knock on her office door sent a jolt through her bloodstream. Security Chief Javier Cruz's shadow loomed in the doorway, his cold gaze piercing. "Dr. Chun, a word," he said, voice low and authoritative. Naomi's throat tightened, but she forced a calm smile. "Of course." In the sterile interrogation room, under the unforgiving glare of overhead lights, Javier questioned her about recent access logs and data transfers. Naomi's mind raced for a plausible explanation, weaving a web of half-truths and technical jargon. Her heart hammered as she sensed the thin line she walked between exposure and survival. After what felt like an eternity, Javier dismissed her with a warning glance. "Be careful where your curiosity leads, Doctor." Back in her sanctuary, Naomi exhaled shakily, the close call a stark reminder of the stakes. Yet beneath the fear, a fierce determination kindled. She was no longer just a scientist. She was a guardian of truth, a beacon for those blinded by the corporation's shadows. Late one evening, as rain streaked the skyscraper's glass facade, Naomi sat alone in the lab, decrypting a fresh cache of files Lila had extracted. The data unveiled chilling details, protocols for memory erasure, emotional conditioning algorithms, and disturbing reports of psychological collapse among test subjects. Each revelation deepened the chasm of guilt and outrage within her. But amidst the darkness, Naomi found resolve. She would continue to aid Lila, to fight in whatever way she could. The road ahead was fraught with peril, but the cost of silence was far greater. As dawn broke, painting the city in hues of coal blue and gray, Naomi sent her latest encrypted message to Lila, a lifeline thrown across the void, a small but vital piece of the puzzle. Somewhere deep inside, she dared to hope that together, they might unravel the nightmare 10 floors below and reclaim the humanity that technology sought to erase. But tonight, that sanctuary betrayed her. The air felt thick and oppressive. Even the faintest light from her desk lamp seemed to flicker uncertainly, casting long shadows that danced in rhythm with her faltering heartbeat. She sat slumped in her chair, fingers trembling as she stared blankly at the screen before her. The code scrolling endlessly was no longer a familiar ally, but a torrent of indecipherable symbols, fragments of data she could no longer grasp. Her mind flickered, a sudden void where seconds vanished like smoke, memories dissolving into nothingness. A chill crept up her spine as an oppressive wave of dread flooded her chest. The fragmented images that surfaced, flashes of places she couldn't place, faces distorted and blurred, disoriented her. Was it real? Or had the corporation's shadowy experiments already reached into her mind's deepest vaults? Her breath hitched. The room tilted. Panic tightened its grip. Suddenly, the door burst open, breaking the suffocating silence. Ethan Shaw strode in, urgency etched across his rugged features. His usual easy smile was replaced by a grim determination as he quickly set a secure laptop on the cluttered table. "Layla," he said, voice low but steady, "you're not alone in this. They're trying to get inside your head, but we've got tools." She looked up, eyes glassy, searching his face for some anchor. Trust felt like a fragile thread stretched taut between them, but she grasped it desperately. "I don't know what's real anymore," she whispered. Ethan nodded, pulling her away from the screen. "We'll fight this, together." Later that night, Naomi Chun arrived, her presence as quiet and tentative as a shadow slipping through the door. The sterile scent of antiseptic clung to her coat, and her delicate hands trembled slightly as she produced a small vial filled with translucent liquid. "This might help," Naomi said softly, adjusting her glasses nervously. "It's experimental, but it could stabilize your cognitive functions, slow down whatever they're doing to your memories." Lila studied the vial, then the earnest face of the scientist who risked everything to aid her. "I don't have a choice," she murmured, swallowing hard. With a steadying breath, Naomi administered the medication. Layla felt a slow, creeping calm begin to settle beneath the storm raging in her mind. Days blurred as the psychological warfare escalated. Digital assaults on her neural pathways, subliminal messages infiltrating her dreams, emotional tides rising and crashing without warning. Each blackout shredded fragments of her past, each manipulated feeling a betrayal from within. Yet, with Ethan's technical expertise and Naomi's medical insight, Lila fought back. Together, they orchestrated countermeasures, firewalls for her mind, digital shields woven through code and psychological resilience. One night, the trio huddled around a monitor, cascading lines of code reflecting in Lila's piercing eyes. Her fingers danced across the keyboard, trembling but determined as she struggled to reclaim control. "We're close," Ethan whispered, voice taut with hope and fear. "Hold on," Lila breathed, every muscle tense, every thought a battle. In the face of overwhelming odds, she refused to surrender. The corporation might assault her mind, but her will flickered like a stubborn flame, fragile yet unextinguished. As the chapter closed, shadows lengthened beyond the walls of her apartment. The fight was far from over. But Lila Morgan stood unbroken, ready to push deeper into the abyss of secrets beneath the skyscraper, to confront the pressure points where power sought to fracture her very self. And in that defiant stance, hope took root. Lila Morgan stood near the concierge desk, her sharp eyes fixed on the elderly woman behind it. Mildred Hayes, the concierge, was a fixture of the building, an unassuming presence who had witnessed its every change for decades. Tonight, though, there was something different in the way Mildred glanced around, a flicker of unease that betrayed her usual composed demeanor. Layla approached cautiously, aware that every conversation here could be overheard or recorded. Yet she needed answers, and Mildred was the only person who seemed to harbor a silent knowledge about the building's oddities. Leaning slightly closer, Lila lowered her voice to a near whisper. "Mildred, I know you see things. I know you hear things. There's more to this building than anyone admits." The older woman's eyes narrowed, scanning the quiet lobby as if weighing the danger of speaking aloud. After a moment, she nodded subtly, reaching beneath the counter to retrieve a small, folded piece of paper. With a trembling hand, she slid it across to Lila. "Not here," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Safe place. Hidden doors. Watch the elevators. Some don't go where they say." Lila's fingers trembled as she unfolded the note. It was a crudely drawn schematic of the lower floors, with cryptic annotations marking what looked like hidden access points, maintenance shafts, emergency exits, and even what appeared to be a secret elevator shaft. This was the break she had been waiting for. "Why help me?" Lila asked, her voice soft but urgent. Mildred hesitated, then sighed, her eyes reflecting a lifetime of secrets. "Because they're wrong to keep us in the dark. And because I've seen what happens to those who ask too many questions." A sudden chime from the elevator echoed through the lobby, breaking the tension. Mildred glanced toward the doors and straightened, her expression tightening. "Be careful, Lila, they're watching." Back in her apartment, the faint hum of the city below was muted by the thick glass walls. Layla sat hunched over her laptop, the blue light illuminating her focused face as she studied the schematics. Each line drawn by Mildred opened a new pathway in her mind, a way deeper into the building's secrets, a step closer to the hidden sub-basement, but the knowledge came with a price. Every keystroke sent ripples through the building's digital defenses, triggering silent alarms she could not yet see. The footsteps in the hallways grew more frequent, and the digital glitches she had noticed earlier became more aggressive, as if the building itself was tightening its grip. Layla's breath hitched as she heard the faint click of the elevator doors again. The game was changing. The stakes were higher. But armed with Mildred's clues, she was ready to descend, to uncover the truth buried 10 floors below. The night stretched on, filled with whispered plans and the cold glow of screens. Somewhere in the shadows, the skyscraper waited, waiting to see if the hacker who dared to challenge its secrets would survive the fall. Her fingers hovered over the keyboard. The next move would be the riskiest yet, and there was no turning back now. "All right," Lila whispered to herself, "let's find out what's really down there." The elevator chimed once more, punctuating the silence like a heartbeat, and with it, the descent into the unknown began. Ethan leaned back in the chair opposite her, his arms crossed, watching her with careful patience. The air was thick with anticipation and unspoken fears. "You never really told me much about why you're so careful," Ethan said, breaking the silence. His voice was steady but gentle. Layla's fingers trembled slightly as she tapped away at the keyboard, pulling up fragmented files and encrypted logs. "It's not just paranoia," she said at last, voice low. "There are things I don't remember, Ethan. Things that feel like they're supposed to be forgotten. Like someone's been erasing pieces of me." Ethan nodded slowly, his expression softening. "I've seen it happen. People caught in those experiments. They lose themselves." She swallowed hard, the weight of years of isolation pressing down. "I think I'm one of them, or at least I was. I don't know how much of what I remember is real and how much is implanted. It's like my own mind is a battlefield." Ethan reached out, hesitating for a moment before his hand brushed lightly against hers. "You're not alone in this. Whatever they did, we'll fight it together." For a moment, the cold barrier Lila had built around herself cracked, warmth blooming where there had only been shadows. Trust was an unfamiliar territory, but here, now it was a lifeline. The rain began to patter against the window, a steady rhythm that matched the pounding of her heart. They shifted their focus to the mission ahead, pulling up the schematics of the skyscraper's lower levels. Lines and nodes glowed on the digital blueprint, revealing security checkpoints, ventilation shafts, and hidden access points. "If we're going to get to the sub-basement, we need to move fast and be invisible," Ethan said, tracing a path with his finger. "I can disable the external cameras for a small window, but inside, you'll have to use your skills to stay off the grid." Layla nodded, absorbing every detail. "And what about backup?" "Naomi's working on a medical protocol to help with memory stabilization if things go sideways. But we have to count on ourselves first. The plan was risky, but necessary. Each step deeper into the building meant peeling back layers of deception and danger. As they worked, the tension between them eased, replaced by a shared determination. Layla found herself searching Ethan's eyes for reassurance, and when he smiled, a rare, genuine smile, it was like a beacon in the encroaching darkness. "I don't want to lose you," Ethan admitted quietly. "You won't," Lila replied, her voice firmer. "Not this time." Hours slipped by as they finalized their strategy, the digital world their battleground. Outside, the storm raged, but inside this cramped room, a fragile alliance was forged, one built on trust, fear, and a desperate hope for truth. Lila glanced at the clock. Midnight was approaching. The city slept unaware that beneath its gleaming surface, two hackers were preparing to descend into the abyss. And with every keystroke, every whispered plan, the line between ally and enemy blurred, setting the stage for a confrontation that could change everything. She was no longer alone. But the question remained, could trust be enough to survive the darkness 10 floors below? The faint hum of the building's infrastructure reverberated softly, a constant reminder of the machine they sought to infiltrate. Ethan's hand rested steady on the panel's edge as Layla's fingers danced swiftly across her hacking device, overriding the electronic lock with practiced ease. The door gave a soft click and swung open to reveal a narrow staircase spiraling down into darkness. A hidden passage that no tenant or staff member acknowledged, buried 10 floors beneath their feet. The air inside the shaft was stale, tinged with the metallic scent of machinery and the faintest trace of disinfectant. Layla's eyes flicked to Ethan, whose face was set in a grim mask of concentration. "You ready for this?" he whispered, voice low, barely audible over the faint whir of hidden motors. She nodded, swallowing a lump of unease. "We don't have a choice. This is where the truth waits." With careful steps, they descended, the only sounds the soft tap of their shoes against concrete and the occasional creak of aged metal. The dim emergency lights mounted on the walls cast long, jittering shadows that seemed to flicker with every movement, warping the sterile corridor into something sinister. Layla's mind raced with every scenario, traps, surveillance, even worse, yet she forced herself to focus on the task ahead. At the bottom, a heavy steel door barred their way. Ethan knelt, pulling a compact toolkit from his backpack. "Let me handle this," he murmured, fingers nimbly working to disable the manual locks. Minutes stretched as tension thickened the air, but finally the door groaned open, revealing a small, humming elevator shaft. The elevator was an anachronism, bulky, utilitarian, and seemingly forgotten by the gleaming skyscraper above. Lila stepped inside, the cold metal walls reflecting her steely expression. Ethan followed, and she pressed the call button marked B10. A faint clunk signaled the elevator's awakening, and it began its slow, deliberate descent. The confined space seemed to shrink around them as the elevator plunged into darkness. The only illumination came from a small, flickering panel above the doors, casting an eerie glow on their faces. Lila's pulse quickened, the silence broken only by the soft buzz of the elevator motor and the steady rhythm of her own breathing. "Do you think we'll find her?" Ethan asked quietly, eyes fixed on the dimming numbers that ticked down floor by floor. Lila hesitated. "I don't know, but we have to try." Suddenly, the elevator jolted, a shudder running through its frame. Ethan's hand shot out to steady himself. "Stay alert," he warned. "I'm sure they're watching." The door slid open onto a long, sterile corridor bathed in harsh fluorescent light. The air was unnervingly cold, clinical, a far cry from the luxury just floors above. Lila stepped out, scanning the surroundings. Rows of sealed doors lined the hallway, each marked with cryptic codes and warning signs. She swallowed her fear. "This is it," she said, voice steady despite the knot tightening in her stomach. 10 floors below ground, and no one wants to admit it exists. Ethan nodded, pulling out a small device to monitor security feeds. "We're not alone down here. They've got eyes everywhere." Together they moved forward, every step echoing ominously in the vast, empty space. Layla's mind raced with possibilities. What secrets lay behind those doors? What horrors had been hidden from the world for so long? As they advanced deeper into the sub-basement, the fluorescent lights flickered overhead, casting fleeting shadows that danced like ghosts on the walls. The building's chilling secret was no longer theoretical. It was real, tangible, and threatening. Lila's determination hardened. She would uncover the truth, no matter what it cost her. But she couldn't shake the feeling that with every step she took, the walls themselves were closing in. The descent had begun, and there was no turning back. "Stay close," she whispered to Ethan, glancing over her shoulder as distant footsteps echoed down the corridor, growing louder and more deliberate. "We're not alone." The fight for freedom had truly started 10 floors below in the heart of darkness. Lila exhaled slowly, pressing her back against the cold steel wall as the door slid open with a hiss, revealing a corridor bathed in a clinical, unforgiving white glow. The air was cooler here, tinged with the sterile scent of antiseptic and the faint metallic tang of machinery. Her eyes adjusted quickly, scanning the space before her. The sub-basement was nothing like the glossy luxury apartments she had come to know as home. Here, everything was utilitarian, designed for function over comfort, a labyrinth of polished concrete walls and gleaming steel doors. Ethan stepped beside her, his tall frame casting a long shadow against the stark corridor. His jaw was set, brows knit in concentration as he surveyed their surroundings. "You ready for this?" he asked quietly, though the tension in his voice betrayed his calm facade. Lila nodded, fingers curling tightly around the small hacking device she carried. No turning back now. They moved forward cautiously, their footsteps muffled against the smooth floor. The hum of fluorescent lights overhead was punctuated by the distant whirring of unseen machinery, a mechanical heartbeat that underscored the eerie stillness. Every sound seemed amplified their breathing, the soft clink of Lila's keys as she adjusted her pack, the faint rustle of fabric. Shadows flickered along the walls, thrown by the harsh lighting, turning the corridor into a place where menace seemed to lurk just out of sight. At the end of the hallway, a pair of sliding steel doors stood partially ajar, revealing a large chamber beyond. Lila approached first, her eyes narrowing as she took in the sight. Rows of translucent pods lined the room, each softly glowing with an otherworldly blue light. Inside, some indistinct shapes shifted figures reclining in suspended animation, their faces obscured by frosted glass. Others were empty, their interiors silent and still. A cold shiver ran down Lila's spine as she realized the purpose of these pods. They were not merely scientific curiosities, they were prisons for the mind, vessels of control and confinement. The digital interfaces beside each pod flickered with streams of data, complex graphs of brainwave patterns and coded readouts scrolling relentlessly. Lila's fingers itched to touch the controls, to breach the digital veil and uncover the full extent of the horrors concealed here. Ethan joined her side, pulling out his portable hacking rig. "Let's see what they're hiding," he murmured, voice low, but edged with urgency. His fingers danced across the keyboard, bypassing firewalls and decrypting layers of encryption with practiced ease. Files spilled onto their screen protocols detailing memory erasure procedures, emotional conditioning sequences, and psychological manipulation frameworks. The full scope of the corporation's experiments stretched before them in chilling clarity. Lila's heart pounded as she absorbed the implications. This was no mere research facility, it was a citadel of control, a place where identities were fractured and rewritten, where autonomy was stripped away in the name of profit and power. A sudden, shrill alarm shattered the heavy silence, red lights flooding the chamber in a harsh, urgent glow. The hum of machinery was replaced by the clatter of boots and the sharp commands of security personnel mobilizing. Lila grabbed Ethan's arm, her grip tight with adrenaline. "We've been made," she hissed, eyes darting toward a narrow maintenance hatch nearby. Without hesitation, Ethan kicked it open and they slipped inside, the cold metal pressing against their backs as the hatch sealed shut. The muffled sounds of pursuit echoed faintly above them. Breathless but resolute, Lila pressed her hand to the cool wall, steeling herself. The sub-basement's shadows were closing in, but so was her determination. She would not let the corporation's darkness consume her or the truth she sought. The fight had only just begun. As they crawled through the cramped maintenance tunnels, every heartbeat thrummed with dread and defiance. The secrets of the sub-basement were out in the open now, and with each passing second, the stakes grew higher. Lila's mind raced plans, contingencies, escape routes, while fragments of memory flickered at the edges of her consciousness, taunting and elusive. Yet, in that suffocating darkness, a spark of hope glimmered. They had glimpsed the machinery of control, and with that knowledge came power. To expose, to resist, to reclaim what had been stolen. The labyrinth below the skyscraper was a prison, yes, but it was also a battleground. And Lila Morgan was ready to fight.